And I'd like to take some time today in this sanctuary because it's a special, probably the most special day in the Jewish tradition, starts this evening at sundown, the beginning of Yom Kippur, holiest day on the Jewish calendar. And we've been in actually for the past 9 days or so since Friday night a week ago. Marks kind of the beginning of this very holy period in the tradition, starting with Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah marking sort of the head or the start of the Jewish New Year. And Rosh Hashanah is followed by these 10 days of, they're called the days of awe or the days of repentance. And this period of really, it's a period in the tradition of profound turning inwards, introspection, where Jews around the world are focusing on dedicating kind of their mind, their body, their soul to this profound process of reconciliation with their fellow human beings, reconciliation with themselves, reconciliation with God. I thought for today, I'd like to bring focus to this other reconciliation that this holiday can point all of us towards, whether we are Jewish or not, which is a spiritual reconciliation, if you will. Um, the quintessential move of this sort of period of time in this tradition, and particularly in Yom Kippur, is this move of what's called repentance. And that can be a charged word for us, depending on the tradition we grow up with or what we may associate that word with. Literally, the Hebrew of the word repentance means return. So, this holiday, this period of time, is a profound opportunity to return, to turn inwards, to turn ourselves around, to orient ourselves out of some of the egoic addictions that we may be engaged with, the unskillful behaviors we may be engaged with, and turn back towards that better direction of focusing ourselves on God. And that may not be a word that resonates for you. You could think of it as focusing yourself on the deepest place of goodness in your own being. And that call to return, in my mind, is unbelievably important right now. Here we are in the midst of this pandemic. We're in the midst of these intersecting crises playing out around us. And it's so easy right now to disconnect from that spiritual center. It's so easy to turn away. It's so easy to put all of our focus outside ourselves, over there. And we know that if we do that for too long, if we do that for too much of our day, that's not good for us, right? That's not good for our mental health. It's not good for the health of humanity. It only increases our feeling of overwhelm, increases our feeling of hatred or anger, increases our feeling of division and chaos. And so Yom Kippur can be this profound reminder for all of us that we are called to return. You know, the Jewish tradition says we should always orient ourselves towards God, towards this deeper center, towards our deepest values, whether those are justice, righteousness, kindness, compassion, hope, love, that it's sort of our job on the spiritual journey to continue over and over to return to those, to return to that part of us that's bigger, deeper, and wider than the noise all around us, you know, and to make sure that we are rooted in that center. Now, that's not to deny what's going on around us. That's not to say we don't be in action in the world or stand up for what we believe in. We do all of those things, yet we do that from a place of profound rootedness, of profound centeredness in these values. And, this connection to that, what you would call spiritual nourishment, because the world out there is always going to be um, unstable on some level. And the pandemic just has heightened, in a way, the kind of instability out there. And if we're putting all of our eggs in the basket of the material world, it's always a shaky place. When our center is from this deeper center, this spiritual center, if you want, whether that's connection to God, connection to truth, connection to love, we can we can be anchored even in the midst of profound shakiness out there. I heard this week about a woman, a young Jewish woman, who was living in a concentration camp and who suffered unbelievable, unthinkable injustice. And the outer circumstances of her life were unbelievably difficult. And I read some words from her, that told me she was still able to return to that center despite what was going on around her. And I'd like to share those words with all of us today as inspiration. This is a woman named Eddie Hillesum, young Jewish woman in the middle of a concentration camp. Think of what that outer circumstance would be like. And in the midst of this, here's what she writes: there is a really deep well inside of me, and in it dwells God. Sometimes I am there too. And that is all we can manage these days. And that is all that really matters, that we safeguard that little piece of you, God, in ourselves, that we safeguard that little piece of you, God, that we keep returning to that little piece of love, to that little piece of truth, to that spark of light in ourselves, that quality of repenting, of turning back towards that, coming back to that, tending to that place, safeguarding that little place, and choosing that again and again above the outer pulls, the outer noise. So Eddie's word for that deep well inside of her was God. But what is that deep well for you? Maybe it's God, maybe it's truth, maybe it's love, maybe it's contribution or justice or service. What is that thing that, no matter what else is going on, this matters the most? And how do we return to that and live from that in this chaos we're living through right now? One capacity that allows us to do that, I would call devotion. Devotion, again, is a word that, depending on the tradition we grew up in, may have different meanings or connotations for each of us. But if we take devotion just from its original Latin root, devovere, meaning to vow, devotion indicates this deep sense of commitment, this deep commitment to return again and again, to return to what it is we're most loyal to, what it is that's most important to us. So devotion is this, in a way, profound movement of the heart that is answering that call in our soul, that call in our being, by vowing to pay attention and orient our life around that, around what is most meaningful to us. And it's interesting that Yom Kippur, to go back to that, starts tonight with this famous prayer called the Kol Nidre, that's sung at the beginning of tonight's service. And the Aramaic meaning of Kol Nidre means all vows. And it's a chance to release us from any unmet vows of the past year and kind of give us a clean slate to recommit, to find that deeper vow. What is it we want to begin this new year with? And whether we're Jewish or not, we can all take a beautiful moment from that teaching, from that tradition, to see what is that vow, that if I have a clean slate, and the truth is, in any present moment, we have a clean slate to recommit, to refine. What is it that our soul most deeply wants to align itself around, right? What is that vow of our heart? And how can we orient our life and our actions in the outer world? Again, this doesn't deny or disconnect us from the outer world, but it does help us orient differently to the outer world. Again, if we're oriented over there and constantly just responding to what is in front of us, whether that's news that we're reading or something we're seeing on TV or the latest thing that makes us angry, if we're living our life constantly in reaction to that, it's not going to be a very effective or very nourishing life, right? But if we're living from this deeper vow, this deeper commitment, this deeper return to what's most true in our hearts, and leading from there, we can make quite a difference in this outer world. And I think actually this outer world needs right now more people who are repenting, more people who are returning, more people who are grounded in these soul values, you could call them, more people who are in alignment with that, and then moving outward from that deeper alignment. That's how we're going to survive this pandemic, these multiple pandemics. That's how we're going to really contribute to humanity. So we have this opportunity to take a moment today to realign, right? To realign with that inherent light in us, that inherent goodness, that spark of love, of compassion, of God, of kindness within us, and choose that vow to commit to being that in the world. God knows our world is in desperate need of that right now.